Hi everyone, it's Ash from FPLHINTS here with my annual prediction of Fabio Borges' Game Week 1 team. As always, if you're able to like, share and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. New for the 25-26 season, I've got a WhatsApp broadcast channel. Feel free to join on the link below. And also, if you want to buy me a coffee, a link of that is in the description below as well. So what I'm going to do is just give a quick summary, first of all, on Fabio Borges, who he is, and a summary of his management style. We'll look at how his team did and how it appeared at certain intervals during last season. And then I'll get straight into creating the hypothetical draft, which I think he will line up for game week 1. And I'll make 10 specific predictions as well as 3 bonus predictions. So, firstly, spoiler alert, I've already written a detailed article on Fabio Borges and his philosophy and all about him. It's on my website. I'll put a link of that in the description below as well. But for the purpose of this video, super quick summary on Fabio Borges in case you don't know who he is. He's had 8 consecutive top 5k finishes in FPL with the best rank of 95th, which I believe he finished in the 18-19 season. Now, admittedly, his last 2 seasons haven't been as great. In terms of his hallmarks, he's definitely, as per many of the elite FPL managers, he focuses on being patient over panicking, minimal hits, very rare for him to take a hit, and in fact, last season didn't take any hits at all. He's adaptable, but he's steady, so he adjusts strategies to injuries, form, and fixtures without overreacting. He certainly doesn't make his drafts for the short haul, and I think it's clear that he's also very data driven and disciplined on that front, relies on logical decision making rather than emotional choices. And without a shadow of a doubt, what's worked for him over the past decade is really his consistency in how he has performed. So I'm going to just show you a quick snapshot of his season history from the past few seasons and also how he used his chips during the 24-25 season. So we can see he wildcarded in game week 11 and then triple captained during game week 24. A few game weeks after that, did the wild card in game week 30. And again, he basically harvested his chips and then leveraged them during the doubles. And what will be different this time around is that we've got an extra amount of chips. So no doubt he'll be using some of his chips, well, he have to, in the first half with the additional bench boost and the additional triple captain chip. And I'll make a prediction on chip usage in game week 1 as well. But we can see there solid overall ranks over the past decade. 31.8k last season, which I would argue is actually a very commendable rank considering there are 10 million plus FPL managers in the game in this day and age. And just showing how he started off as well, that started off relatively slow, 2.6 million, and finally broke into the 1 million tier by game week 11. The wild card really did him wonders, really jump started his season, and then progressively worked his way up into top 200k. And then if I just go to the second half of the season, we can see he had a few red arrows, but remained consistently in the top 200k, finally broke into the top 100k by game week 31, and then progressively worked his way up with the usage of his chips and finished on a high up to 31k. So again, this validates his management style as well, that he's very steady in his approach and ultimately his long-term planning works. And we can see there that actually from game week 29 onwards, he only had 2 red arrows. So I think the only radical change that we noticed actually in his overall rank was that game week 11 wildcard, the first one that he used, that really jump started him and then progressively just worked his way up. So he doesn't often get dark green arrows or dark red arrows. He just makes his steps up the ladder on an incremental basis. So I think just wanted to call that out specifically there. And just a quick snapshot into how his team looked as well from game week 1 last season, first of all. So what was telling is that many FPL managers had the conundrum on whether to go for Salah and Haaland, Salah only, or Haaland only. And he went for Haaland only. So it kind of set him back slightly at the start. And he also, interestingly enough, had Quansah, just like many other FPL managers. In fact, he had the double 4.0 combo there with Harwood Bellis as well, and Harry Winks. Forced himself into a 3-4-3 formation with two relatively strong attacking defenders. And then again, the purpose of that was that he could basically have balance across the pitch. And what was interesting is that if you then look at his game week 11 wildcard, he didn't panic with Quansah, by the way. He didn't sell him immediately. That was my prediction, that he'd sell him from the get-go, but he actually harvested his transfers and then sold him later on. And then by the time of this first wildcard, worked amazingly well for him. 50 points, well above the average. And with this, you look, he's got a Manchester United asset, which obviously didn't work out over the course of the season, but he's ever reliant on Bruno Fernandes, who was in his game week 1 team, and he retained him for the game week 11 wildcard, early on Cunha, early on Mbumo as well, and had finally flipped out Haaland and got Salah in. So ultimately, Salah, by then, his returns were still relatively, he carried on putting out some hefty returns. He missed out on the early returns. I'd argue had he gone for Haaland over Mohamed Salah from game week 1, he probably would have finished in the top 5k again. That was the fine margins that hampered that season, albeit still 31k is still amazing, but he corrected that after evaluating how the team was. And just lastly, how his team ended as well in game week 38. So Jared Bowen, who basically worked wonders at the final end of the season, and he retained Mbumo, had Salah, no Haaland because of the issues he had, albeit with Mohamed Salah in particular, his season kind of completely went quiet for the last few weeks, for sure. And then interesting ensemble up front of Evanilson, Wissar, and Isak. So we saw that he went 3-5-2 with the wild card, but then he returned to 3-4-3 with his final game week team. And then you can see he got Gvardiol, Williams. So he's got like a nice balance and spread there as well. And the hallmark here is he's not afraid to go 3-5-2 or 3-4-3, depending on what the situation is. And he will definitely balance out his team and spread funds accordingly. But anyway, enough of that analysis. You want to know, what will Fabio Borges' team look like for game week 1 ahead of the season opener. So without further ado, we'll get straight into it. And just some caveats as well, that how I've done in previous seasons. I'd say I started off with some of the previous predictions I've done in seasons gone by, some of them very accurate. I think there's one season I got 4 out of 5 of his defense spot on and 4 out of 5 of his midfield spot on. I think it was a bit more mixed last season, but it's just a fun exercise nonetheless to put yourself in the mindset of an elite FPL manager to see what they would essentially come up with. And the other caveat I wanted to mention specifically for this draft in particular is that it's a lot harder this time around because we've got rule changes, which I alluded to with the additional chips in the first half of the season with the triple captaincy and the bench boost, and also the rule changes with defensive contributions as well. So to what extent will Fabio Borges factor that in as well is going to be a variable which I didn't have to worry about in seasons gone by. So let's crack on and begin with prediction number 1. So prediction number 1, I'm projecting that Fabio Borges will not bench boost or use any chip in game week 1. And that's something that I will say from the get-go. And I'll also say he won't litter his team with midfielders who are defensive contribution magnets. He'll stick to the traditional tried and tested midfielders in terms of how his format and structure is from seasons gone by. So that's something I wanted to just say from the get-go. And the other prediction I'll mention, so obviously we saw that he opted for Haaland in game week 1 last season, didn't have the double up, and then had Salah by game week 11. The second prediction is he won't double up on Haaland and Salah. He has to make a choice, and that choice will be Mohamed Salah will be his premium expensive asset. So in he comes in this draft. So just got him there already. So I will restore Mohamed Salah. So Mohamed Salah will make the cut in this draft. Prediction number 3, he won't spend more than 9 million on his goalkeepers. So we've seen in like previous iterations, to be fair, finished the season with David Raya as an expensive goalkeeper, which is quite rare. He normally does like his 4.5s. I think David Raya might have had a double game week, if I'm not mistaken, or he was a cheaper defensive asset for Arsenal then, so he might have just gone that way. But the prediction I'm making is that, like I've said, 9 million will be his cap. He generally picks 4.5, 4.0 goalkeepers, so he enjoyed picking like Valdemarson and then a 4.5 in previous seasons. So I'm going to say this time around that when it comes to the goalkeepers, I'm going to sort this by selected percentage. Dubravka will be one of his goalkeepers as a 4.0, but I think that the other goalkeeper that he's going to pick in his team will be a 5.0 goalkeeper, because albeit there is still value in the 4.5s, I think a lot of the 4.5s have tricky fixtures for the opening games, and he likes to focus on the long haul. So it's actually Matt Sells that catches my eye for Forest, and he's got quite a few green block fixtures here as well. So I think Matt Sells will be his 5.0 starting keeper. And he's got Dubravka as a playing 4.0 there as well. So £9 million cap on the goalkeepers, and I think that won't be a million miles off his start goalkeeping combo. And prediction number 4, he won't buy any player that's a new signing to the Premier League. So this is a hallmark of his, and he always picks players that are tried and tested from the get-go. And this kind of limits like the players somewhat. And just a caveat, he might have a player who's like a newly promoted player, but that won't be a starting player. His starting 11, I'm 90% confident it will basically be players that featured in the Premier League last season. So what that basically means for this draft is that a lot of the players that he, who are popular picks, so your Florian Wirtz, you've got Akite and the like, Gyökeres. I don't think he's going to pick any of those players. He'll pick the players that he relied on last season to an extent, but also players who have a reasonable run of games who may not have necessarily picked as well. So that's something which kind of boxes me in to a large extent, because you've got a lot of popular picks from the newly signed players, but he's not going to rely on a newly signed Premier League player as a starter. And if he does, there might be one like random one, but it's not going to be a core asset. I'll be very surprised if that's the case. So the next prediction that I'm going to make is that he will pick 2 defenders at the very least that are 5.5 plus. So almost like in this day and age, that's 2 premium defenders. And I think the 2 premium defenders that he will pick for his draft. So I'm just going to go to defenders right now. So I know that for the purpose of a lot of the draft building that's happening at the moment in FPL, that Ait Nouri is the popular pick over Gvardiol, but I think he will go for Gvardiol as one of his premium defenders. And I also think another player that no doubt would catch his eye, reasonable fixtures as well, it's Cucurella. So Cucurella had 7 attacking returns and 9 clean sheets for Chelsea. I think that he is an option. There aren't lots of players who are premiums, have got really good opening games, but I would say that Cucurella is definitely one who would be on his radar for sure. And he wasn't in one of those drafts that we've seen from last season, but I'm also going to put it out there. So I've mentioned he'll have at least two £5.5 million defenders. But for the purpose of this draft, I'm going to be a bit bold here, and I'm going to also put in Pedro Porro. So he'll factor in that attacking prowess for all three of these defenders. For my prediction, he'll have at least two 5.5 plus defenders here, which obviously means that we'll have to balance the team accordingly. So yeah, Gvardiol, Cucurella, and Pedro Porro will be his set and forget defenders for the start of the season, and it ensures that he won't have to chop and change the defense. And that's the vibe that you really do get of Fabio Borges, that he won't really want to change his defense unless he really has to. So he'll rely on players who are proven, got the attacking prowess. So Quansah's a good example. He picked Quansah. Quansah got the price drop barely after day one of game week 1, but he didn't shift him out until later on. So that's something that I'm going to call now, that the premium defenders will be there for him. I've picked 3, but I think at the very least he'll definitely pick 2. So moving on to the next prediction, I'm going to say that come onto the formation, he could very easily go for a 3-5-2, but I think he's going to start with a 3-4-3 formation due to the value in the forwards that are available. Now the question is, which 3 forwards is he going to pick? And that moves me on to my next prediction. I think he'll definitely pick Jarrod Bowen. So formation 3-4-3, and Jarrod Bowen will be one of those forwards. Now the question is, which other 2 forwards is he going to pick? So I think João Pedro will be one of those forwards because he's proven in the Premier League. You know, Gyökeres is sticking out there as a very popular pick among FPL managers, but I think that he's not going to catch his eye from the get-go, but it will not be Gyökeres. That will be a shock and a diversion from the way in which Fabio Borges has played the game over the past few years. So the other player I actually had in mind, someone he has had last season as well, it's Chris Wood. Now, Chris Wood, if I'm not mistaken, Forest have signed a new striker, but from what I understand, that other striker has played in the same matches as Chris Wood, and maybe eventually he'll become the main striker to displace Chris Wood. But I think for now, he'll factor in that Chris Wood has got those reasonable fixtures, as we'd alluded to with Sells. So I think Chris Wood, Pedro, and Jarrod Bowen will be the 3 strikers, albeit that's not my prediction. My prediction is he'll have a 3-4-3 formation, and Jarrod Bowen will be one of those strikers for sure. So on to my next prediction now. I think he'll definitely pick 2 Liverpool players. So I'm kind of boxing myself in as well, because I feel that like it won't be Akite, it won't be Florian Wirtz because they're new to the Premier League. So the question is, who else could he pick? He could pick a defensive asset, but I actually think he might go for another Liverpool midfielder, and that midfielder will be, if I can just find him on the list here, let's see how highly owned there he is, Gakpo at £7.5 million. And it was interesting, I looked at the previous drafts that we've seen of Fabio Borges, and there weren't too many double ups. To be fair, he had Mbumo and Wissar towards the end, which I'm going to show on screen here. But then I go on to his wildcard game week 11, no real double ups there. And then onto his game week 1 team, there weren't any double ups. I think he is reluctant to double up too much in attack, albeit I do recall a couple of seasons back he had double Arsenal defence as an opening game week 1 combo because of their generous fixtures. But I'm going to make the prediction that he will definitely pick 2 Liverpool players, and I think it will be Gakpo potentially. But yeah, for the purpose of this draft, it has to be Gakpo because Frimpong or another Liverpool defender won't work here. So team is shaping up quite nicely. We've got 28.5 million to spend with 5 players still to pick. So on to my next prediction. You'll definitely have a 4.0 defender. Again, you've got like at least 2 5.5 defenders. You need to balance the book somehow. And looking at the options that are available, I've already referenced some of these players in my drafts. Esteve, 4.0 million. And you got Reynaldo, albeit a new player for Sunderland. You got Goodmanson as well. And you got Hartman for Burnley as well. I'm just going to, just for the purpose of this draft having a 4.0, because that is the prediction, I'll just pick Esteve because I think he's got a very small amount of attacking prowess, but just want to make this jigsaw fit. There aren't really too many 4.0 assets, but we've seen him. He had 2 last year. I don't think you have 2 this time around. I think you have at least 1, and most likely Hartman or Esteve, and I've gone for Esteve. Of course, Burnley had that amazing defensive record last season, but of course that was under different conditions and with a different goalkeeper. So yeah, Esteve will be his sub 3 at the very best. So that's £24.5 million to spend with 4 berths to fill. So the next prediction that I'm going to make, I think I'm coming towards the end of my predictions there actually. But yeah, he'll captain Mo Salah. I think without a shadow of a doubt, he will be his captain for game week 1. So those are the 10 specific predictions that I wanted to make for his draft. So, but to fill the draft up now, who else is he going to pick? Had he basically had the funds, and I could still make it work, I think he'd want to pick Bruno Fernandes. He'll definitely have a Manchester United attacking asset. Now that attacking asset could be Mbeumo, who he had last season, Cunha, who he had last season, Fernandes, who he had last season. And I think because Fernandes is just a million more, it probably won't be him this time around. It'll be a choice between Cunha and Mbeumo. And it's a real 50-50 there. I'm just going to just almost pick Mbeumo, but yeah, he could easily pick Cunha as well. And I'm not sure whose minutes we managed more between Cunha and Mbeumo. No doubt Fernandes, obviously, he's ex-mins proof anyway, but I do feel he'll have an 8.0, well, he'll have an attacking Manchester United asset. Again, you ignore that first fixture, and in fact, you ignore the Man City fixture as well, that Manchester United have had a bit of an overhaul over the summer, and he'll see the value in that as well. I think he'll make his team a bit lopsided if he had Fernandes, but I think he could make it work potentially if he potentially, let's say Pedro Porro was a Van de Ven, which is still doable, but I think he'll definitely want Manchester United attacking assets. So £16.5 million. I'm going to pick the other defender for this draft. I think he'll definitely see value in Wan-Bissaka. So I'm going to restore him. Wan-Bissaka, who has done really well over the past season, 8 attacking returns, 6 clean sheets. So £4.5 million makes perfect sense. That leaves me with £12 million to spend to complete his draft. So midfielders, just looking at the popular owned ones, yeah, Palmer wouldn't work. He's just a bit too expensive. If he was going to have someone who's 9 million plus, it would have been Bruno Fernandes for sure. Wirtz won't be the case because I feel that he's new to the Premier League. You'd want to see him before he buys him, albeit Wirtz is exceptional value. And Kudus, £6.5 million. Now with him, interestingly enough, 31 starts for West Ham last season, 9 attacking returns, good run of games. Obviously, Spurs have had an injury to Maddison. Whether that hinders or boosts Kudus' chances, it remains to be seen. But I am sitting on the fence on who would he pick as a 6.5 option. I think it'll be Njai or Kudus. I'm going to go for Kudus because I'd say, yeah, reasonable fixtures for both. But with I just favour Spurs' fixtures slightly more. So that leaves me with £5.5 million. Now, I did say that he wouldn't litter his team with players that are like defensive contributions magnets. And looking at the options available for that £5.5 million slot, it could easily be Caicedo, could be Reinders as well, for sure. Even Belabor, potentially, as well. So the question is, who is he going to pick for that final slot? And with Caicedo, because he had the additional, I think it would have been additional 40 points for him last season, had he had defensive contributions points then. I think he probably is one of the players he could potentially use as a sub 1 option potentially. So in this team, you've got João Pedro, Wood, Jared Bowen, and you'd start with Kudus, Gakpo, Salah and Bumo, and then Caicedo will be that player who you could start him in certain matches, but you'd have him as your sub 1. That's where your defensive contributions points, you don't want to just waste points on the bench. You don't want a £4.5 million midfield asset. He had Harry Winks last year, but they've bumped up and inflated the defensive midfielders because of the defensive contributions points. So that's the budget maxed out. And just giving this a final look over. So the 3 other predictions I want to mention, almost like bonus predictions, is he will not pick an Arsenal defender or goalkeeper this time around because the fixtures are considerably trickier for Arsenal. The other prediction I'll make is he will not pick Saka, which is problematic because Saka is a tried and tested asset, but then he had injuries. So I think you'd wait for Saka to basically get back to his old ways before he picks him. And he will not pick more than one Manchester City player. So the other side notes I want to mention as well is that I know it's a bit of a tough ask. I've boxed myself in with certain players that are new to the Premier League. He won't pick a starters like I've already mentioned, which that's where my gut feeling lies. And you know what? I like it so much. I'm actually going to pick this as my own draft for now. This is not my final draft, but it's a lot better than what my current draft is. So let's just pick it now. Mohamed Salah, captain. And let's just rejig this team slightly. So Esteve, you're my sub 3. And Pedro Porro starts instead of Wan-Bissaka. So there we go. Let's just save the team as well. Oh, don't want Dubravka in goal. It's Matt Sells. Confirmed. So going to save the team now. So I'm projecting this to be Fabio Borges' Game Week 1 team. Sells in goal. Gvardiol, Pedro Porro, Cucurella in defence, with a power 7 of Mbumo, Gakpo, Salah, captain, Kudus, João Pedro, Jared Bowen, and Chris Wood. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Have I got the prediction completely wrong? Is there logic to what I'm saying? And how does this draft compare to yours? As always, if you're able to like, share, and subscribe, that would be greatly appreciated. If you want to buy me a coffee, or you want to join my WhatsApp broadcast channel, the links are in the description below. Take care and all the best.